How did you get to New York?
I think my obsession with New York has been lifelong. I've always wanted to like move here, but oddly enough, the thing that made me really want to move here was 30 Rock, the show.
Yeah.
And it was just something I was always going to do. Out of college, I actually had an opportunity. I wanted to do stand-up the whole time, so I had an opportunity to move to LA. I say LA. I moved to Bakersfield, California, which is a piece of shit town and 2 hours north of LA.
Yeah.
And so I ended up like kind of being in that area first. And then I got laid off from that job and I moved home and I found a job in Dallas. And I was like, I got to get out of here. And my brother moved to New York. My brother moved to New York. And after a year he was there, he was like, dude, you want to just move out here? And I was like, yeah, I hate it here in Dallas. So I just quit my job and I moved in with him into a basement. And we lived in a Bushwick basement, 4 people, 2 people upstairs, 2 people downstairs. And I just started, that's when I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. So I moved here without a job. My brother was nice enough to put a curtain up in a basement so we could split it. And yeah, that's how I got out here.
Do you remember how much that costs per month?
It was $1,600 for the basement. My brother paid all of it for the first 3 months until I was able to like figure out how to contribute.
How did you hit the ground running when you got here?
So I learned how to be a software engineer from a free class in Dallas. And then I moved here and I was like, I'm just going to get a software engineering job. And I failed every interview. And I was like, I'm not good at this. I'm bad. Because like in Dallas, the company that hired me put on a class and they just hired a few people out of the class. So I got in and I was like good enough, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up taking a boot camp out here, like one of the coding boot camps. And I got very lucky. I like timed it right. And then they ended up hiring me out of that, which was like, it was like a 15-week boot camp. So it was like 3 months. So I ended up doing that when I moved here. And that was how I figured it out.
That boot camp led to a job, which led to income, which allowed you to free up time to pursue comedy.
Exactly. Yeah, like that ended up, I eventually got a software engineering job. I work from home. It's the best job. I get why people hate software and tech people because we have the best. I get it. I would hate if I was not on the inside. I'd be like, you guys don't fucking do anything. You're typing buttons and you get paid at 6 figures. It's bullshit. And it is. And I'm here to, yeah. But what's nice about it is I don't travel on a commute. So I get to work 9 and I can turn my computer off at 5. And that's when comedy starts. It's like my brain just switches directions at 5 p.m.
Did you always know that the tech work was a mechanism by which you could do your craft?
I did not.
Okay.
No, I was kind of freaking out because I got a degree in oil and gas engineering. So I used to work on a big oil rig. And I was like, this fucking sucks, dude. I was like, in college, it was just like the best major, quote unquote, because it like made a bunch of money and had good job prospects. And then I started working and I was like, Jesus, what did I do? You know? So I felt very stuck. And I got laid off. And then I was like trying to get a job that I didn't want. And that was like the weirdest feeling.
Yeah.
Because I was like 24 at the time, maybe. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, this feels bad in both directions. Like it feels bad that I don't have a job. It feels bad that I'm trying to get this job and I don't want this job. So I kind of just like, that's when I found that free class in Dallas that was like, we'll teach you how to do coding stuff. And I wanted to make an app, quote unquote. So I was like, cool, I'll learn that. And then they were nice enough to give me a job after that class.
As a short aside, what do people not understand about what it's like to work on an oil rig?
Oh my, it is a lot of downtime. Well, it depends on what job you have, but it is a lot of downtime. And this is the messed up part is that it's fun until something goes wrong. And then it's like a murder mystery of who fucked up on the oil rig because that company has to pay. So it's like kind of a very high stakes environment where it's like everything's fine, things are going normal, and then something messes up and you like everybody starts pointing fingers at each other, like kind of like Mexican standoff where it's like, no, your company did this, so this is why it broke. And it's just not a positive work environment.
And you're literally living there out at sea?
So I worked kind of like in the desertish mountains of California, we would stay in hotels that were probably like a 30-minute drive.
Okay. Back to comedy.
Yeah.
Did you always know from the time you were a kid this was something you were going to pursue?
Dude, so it was always something I wanted. Like I always like dreamed of it. I just didn't know. I'm from Oklahoma, so like I don't know. This sounds bad, but like I didn't really know you could do it. Like I thought you had to move to LA or New York to do it. And even then, I'm very like I didn't start until I was 30. So I'm like I started very late, so I feel very behind. But like, it was always something I wanted to do. I just didn't really know how or have the guts to. So it took me a long time.
Did you get a lot of feedback when you were growing up that like, dude, you are a funny motherfucker?
I think no, which is bullshit because I was, and people didn't realize it. That's the problem. No, I mean, yeah, me and my friends were all funny. We were all funny. I think, we all would joke around and stuff, but I was never like the loudest or like the most like outgoing. So I think everyone was like, oh no, that guy's the funny guy. Humzah's also there. he's in the background. But I mean, that's kind of my personality is like, more of like a observational guy than being silly myself.
I think there's a big distance between people who are funny and people who are willing to grab a microphone in front of strangers with no soundtrack in the background and just tell jokes. How did you know you even wanted to do that?
It was the first time I heard stand-up comedy. I realized that's how my brain works.
Really?
Yeah. Like I was literally like 6 and we traveled to Pakistan where my cousin showed me audio files of like, it was George Carlin and Eddie Murphy's like Raw and Delirious. And I remember afterwards that was just like, my brain just immediately started like doing the same thing. Like I was like, coming up with bits or whatever in my head. Cause I remember Carlin's bit about like, I was like 7 or something. So like, it's a bit about the airplanes. You've heard this, right?
Remind me.
It's like, they're like, get on the plane. It's like, fuck you. I'm going to get in the plane. It's like, and like people make fun of it nowadays, but like when I heard that, I was like, why do they say on? Why, And then he talks about like the 3 questions they ask you, like, have these bags been in your possession the whole time? He's like, no, I leave them on the corner the night before, it's just like, and I was just like, it was so relatable. And I had just gone through it, even as like a 7-year-old. And it was just like, oh my God, it's genius, And so I think when eventually it was just like, that's how my brain works.
When you first got here and you're living in the basement in Bushwick, how do you even start? I don't know if you had other connections in the comedy world, but how did you even begin to try to pursue this?
Dude, so sadly, I didn't start for another few years. I was figuring my life out, quote unquote, and I ended up just having so much fun here that it took me like 2 years to figure it out, 2 years in a pandemic. But when I started, I literally just Googled open mics, New York City, and I found one. And I practiced my 5 minutes before I got there. I had 5 minutes that I had been talking about. It was essentially a joke about like how during pandemic, it's like, did you notice like all the real jobs were like something about, I don't even know how to say it, but it was just like, what was it? Essential workers.
Yeah.
Where it's like bullshit because like they're also the ones that like don't get paid as much.
Yeah.
And it's like essential was short for like essentially they do all the work while like some guy sends emails or something. I remember I went to an open mic and I tried it and I had 5 minutes and I think I was done after 2 minutes. I was so anxious and nervous. But then I went and sat down and immediately the next person went up and I was like, oh, nobody cares that I was so bad.
Yeah.
And that was like the freeing moment for me. Was like, because I think I'd held myself back because I was so worried about being bad or thinking like, what will people think or whatever.
Yeah.
So knowing nobody cares was like very free.
Liberating. Those early open mics that you went to, I assume the audience is sparse. The feedback is questionable.
Yeah.
Talk about that experience just of doing that.
Well, in New York, it's all comics at open mics. In other cities, you'll get some crowds, which is very helpful. The thing I've realized is you have to, one, if you can get a comic to laugh, it's a good joke.
Yeah.
It's a good joke. But there are also types of jokes that just comics laugh at. Like usually the more like messed up ones is because like comics are so like numb to, regular jokes that like it takes something kind of messed up for them to laugh. So I think it's the quietness is loud whenever you're bombing, especially amongst your peers. But I think it's good. I think it's good because then when you do get a laugh from that room, you have something.
The whole time, the first couple of years when you were partying and having a good time in New York, did you have this gnawing sense that eventually I want to do that, or did that go away for a period of time?
I had it, and it would go away because I was like so in love with what I was like, my work and like my friends and like the just enjoying the city. But I always had this thing like, this is so embarrassing to admit, but like I would go to an open mic and just like watch and not do it. Just like, because I didn't see myself, like, I don't know, I was anxious and like kind of stage frighty. I never felt prepared, and I didn't want to be bad. But like I went to like a few different open mics and just like watched, or like even one time I went to an open mic and they're like, you sign up? I was like, no. And I just like kind of had a beer and then left.
Yeah.
It just like hung around just to like see what it would be like, to be a comic.
Between the beginning where you have those nerves and now, does that ever go away? Do you feel more comfortable on stage?
More comfortable, certainly. Comfortable, no. It just, you know what it is? It's like there's so many factors going into any given performance where it's like, are my friends on the show? Is the crowd big? Is the first comic doing well? Is the venue new? Is there a booker there? Is there, industry there or whatever? Like all these little things kind of play a part.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I've done 5 minutes a bunch of times, but I did a 5-minute show last year and there was like quote unquote industry there. And like now I'm nervous. Like I can feel my heart rate. Like I feel like my voice is shaking on stage. I feel like my act outs are like, I'm like literally my hand was shaking on stage a little bit. And I'm like, I hope nobody notices. So I would definitely say I'm more comfortable, but it just depends on so many things.
What does that mean that there's industry in the stands?
Just like people who like book bigger shows, maybe a guy that books a club, maybe some people that are like talent representation, stuff like that. Just like quote unquote industry. I mean, it's kind of it's funny because at a certain point you realize like all these people are just like regular people who just like are hustling just like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go from the open mics where sometimes you're going up on stage, sometimes you're not. And that's a few years ago, I assume. Talk to me about the evolution over the years of just the frequency of how often you're seeking out doing acts and how that entire process has gone.
I think at first it's like you kind of just got to like dive in 100% and just like I was doing like open mics, 1 or 2 every night and just like establishing a friend group of comics, like kind of like ingraining yourself into the open mic scene. And then like after a while, it's like, your friends will produce shows and like you'll produce something like a show or a podcast or whatever. And everybody kind of like puts each other on. And like when people see you, they're like, oh, that guy's funny. I want him on my show also. Cause it's like people want to produce good shows too. They don't just want their friends over and over. So it's like you kind of just like slowly build. And like I'm still in the process of that, really. Like I'm still doing a lot of indie shows, which is usually just like the show you saw me on. It ended up being me and the producer, both producers were on a show together. And so fortunately, I think they saw me on that show and they're like, oh, great. We'll have Humzah on this. And then from that, I get this. Yeah. And then from this, who knows? You know? So it's just kind of like chain reaction-y.
I don't know that I've met any artist so far in doing these interviews that has as secure of a job that it sounds like you do.
Yeah.
How important has that been for just peace of mind? And I'm curious if you've given it some thought, like if you didn't have that, if you were babysitting, do you think that would make your pursuit of trying to be a comedian far more difficult or not? I don't know how you think about that.
I have thought about this a lot. This is a great question because some people say it's like the opposite, where it's like you need the hunger to really like force yourself to go all in. It's like if you don't go all in, you're never going to make it. And then, I mean, so this is the thing is like I started at 30, which is like kind of a big regret of mine, just like in the general sense, but it's not something I beat myself up over anymore. Because it's like, you're here now, you have those life experiences that'll help you just continue on. And I'm very thankful because like I have friends, like a lot of my friends in comedy are like younger and like they're working, like server, bartender jobs. And it's like, it's tough also. Like there's really no golden road in this thing. So to me, it's more about just being able to like be consistent and working hard and then hoping things will work out. So I guess to answer your question is like, it definitely takes a lot of pressure off and I'm thankful for it. But part of me does be like, damn, you should have just like moved out here at 22 and just done it and stuck it out. Cause you see the people that are like my age, like they are the ones that are like now like blowing up, quote unquote.
Yeah. After 10 years of work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are the comedians? I don't know who comes to mind, but the comedians you see in this city, known or unknown by the general public, who you are amazed by that you think are really great?
Oh, that's a great. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah.
There are so many because this is truly one of the best places. I mean, there's the people of course, but like under that, there's this like layer of comedians that are like incredibly talented that just like don't have the commercial success. The first guy that comes to my mind is Jamie Wolf. I don't know if you've seen him.
I do know Jamie.
He's incredible.
He is.
He's one of the funniest people in New York, probably the world. And yeah, it's funny because I was listening to him on a podcast talking about how he's like still broke. And it's like, that's a crime because you are truly one of the best comics. Osama Siddiqui, I think, is one of the best comics in the city. Maddie Wiener's great, but I think she's about to like probably be commercially successful, but maybe not. I mean, you never, I have no, but those three are, I mean, even Caitlin Plufo, who was on that show, is like really, really great. And yeah, I mean, we could go on. David Drake is the person that I always tell people, if you're a comedy fan, he is like the hardest working New York comic. And he also always talks about being broke, but he puts on a show in New York called Comics You Should Know. It's the best indie show in New York, in my opinion.
Is that at the Gutter?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Every Wednesday night, right?
Every Wednesday and Saturday. I think he produces the Saturdays. And it's incredible. Yeah.
What makes a great stand-up in your mind? You've been doing this for years now. Like, what do you think it is?
That's a dude. And that probably will change. And my taste is different than others, of course. Mine is, I think there comes this moment in comedy or like every favorite special I have where someone says some like honest truth or like harsh truth. Maybe it's like very funny and like kind of what someone needed to say, but like nobody had said it yet. Someone was telling me, that, is it Rick Rubin, the producer?
Sure. Yeah.
Someone was, because I was telling him this and he was like, yeah, Rick Rubin has this theory that he just believes. He's like, that guy, he's like, he like produce music, doesn't know how to make music. But it's just like there at any given time in a zeitgeist, if something needs to be said, it's going to be said, whether you're the person for it or someone else's. It's just going to at any cultural moment in time. Like, I'm doing a bad job of explaining this, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like, there will be the best specials I've ever seen have like a harsh truth in it, a great angle, and like talk about relatively like deep or significant cultural stuff at any given moment. Like the ones I'm thinking of is like Bill Burr's I'm Sorry You Feel That Way is my favorite comedy special. Have you seen it?
I don't know. I've seen so much of his and I'm not sure
it's
if I've
a
seen
black
that
and
one
white special.
Okay, I don't think so.
And he's talking about like this thing that they kept doing where they would like interview people and like get mad at them for like having bad views. And he's talking about the Duck Commander people. You remember when they were famous?
I don't know that, no.
They were like the swamp people on A&E. Anyways, they ask him about like, what do you think about gay people? And the guy's like, I don't like them or whatever. And they're like, how could he say that? And it's like, you knew what he was going to say. You knew before you asked him what he was going to say. And then he like talks about how it's like really not even him. It's like what he learned in church growing up and like goes into this whole like thing about like, how they teach you stuff at a young age and you don't even think about it. And then 30 years later, someone like shoves a mic in your face. And it's just like, I don't know. It's a really good special.
How have you dealt with the, in any way that you can recall, the feedback? I have been to enough stand-up comedy events to have watched people get zero positive affirmation from the crowd and bomb.
Yeah.
I don't know how frequently that has happened to you, if ever, but like I would imagine it takes an incredible amount of self-belief and internal self-confidence to persist even for a few years in the New York scene to keep doing this. Any comments you have on that, I would love to hear.
I think it just depends person to person, because there are people that you meet in comedy that are kind of insane. And just they can bomb consistently and be like, dude, that crowd sucks. It's like, I don't know, dude, it might not be the crowd. It can't be every crowd that sucks. But it happens. I mean, everybody bombs, but I think just like holding on to like, okay, this worked, that didn't work, cut this, change this, needs to be different, this needs to be better. Maybe it was my performance, maybe it was the way I set it up, whatever. And like figuring that out is the like thing that makes you a good comic, I think, at least. And also like banding together with other people that you think are funny and they think you're funny. And it's like, okay, cool, this is a little mutual self-reassurance maybe. And I think that helps also. Where it's like, if you bomb consistently at a mic and then nobody wants to talk to you afterwards, that's where you should have some red flags going off and maybe reconsider.
I don't know if comedians talk about this, but the feedback that they get from the audience, if that is generally regarded as like gospel capital T truth, because to me, the venue itself has such an effect on the atmosphere and the feedback that I've seen comedians at the Village Underground absolutely kill, and then seen them in some off Broadway venue with 6 people in the audience, and it's brutal. How do you think about feedback and an environment to try to calibrate what you want to cut, what you want to add, whether you're even good at this?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely those shows where it's like, you even know before you go up, you're like, we're all gonna bomb, dude. There's 3 people in the crowd. There's a kitchen that's louder than the mic. You know, it's just like, those shows. So it's like, you kind of got to take those with a grain of salt or make the most of them, like to be sillier, be funnier, talk to them, do whatever you can to like fight it. And I think that's a whole skill in of itself. Like the best comics I've seen can make any room theirs, like even if the room's like not paying attention or whatever, they come up and they like command a room. As far as like taking the audience's word as truth and gospel, I mean, that's the goal, is to make people laugh, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you've got to be able to, but there have been times where it's just like, this audience sucks. It's like person after person will go up and like, will like just like do jokes that do work, and they're just not hitting. People aren't paying attention. People are tight, whatever. I actually saw it happen not too long ago, and it was like 3 great comedians went up, all struggled. And the last comedian came up and he just was like, what's going on in here? He was like, what's going on? This guy told on me in the back because I was talking too loud. These people are on their phone. He's like, these people aren't laughing, whatever. And by the end, they were all paying attention and they were all laughing. So sometimes it's also just like the energy that's in a room, because it's a live performance like anything else. And it's like probably the most odd live performance too, right? Like you were mentioning earlier, where it's like, there's no backtrack, which I think you might be onto something. Backtrack for it would be a good idea. and then so the energy in the room really matters.
And you've probably performed at many venues. What are the great venues in New York City for people that have never been here? What are the great stand-up venues in the city? Okay,
so the big hits, of course, are Comedy Cellar, both rooms, the Stand, New York Comedy Club. Those are probably like the top clubs. In my opinion, the Gutter indie shows, Comics You Should Know, one of the top rooms. Littlefield, one of the top rooms. Union Hall, one of the top indie rooms. The new clubs, Flophouse and Bushwick Comedy Club, both great rooms. And then, there's also like, I'm trying to think if there's any other ones. Grove 34 and QED in Astoria are both also really good comedy clubs.
In your, I don't know if you've noticed a pattern in this, but the in the crowds that are brutal and that are dead and that give very little feedback, what tends to cause that in your, if you've noticed, is it the time of the day? Is it the sobriety of the people there? What have you noticed, if anything, about what's causing
I think it's a lot of things. Mostly though, is that the room just isn't set up right. And that's like a mixture of things, meaning like lighting, size, and then like expectations set by the host. Like the hosting job is the most important job in comedy because he's the one that'll come out and he'll be like, all right, we're going to have comics coming up. If you need to order a drink, try to or get up, try to do it when I'm on stage, not when they're on stage, keep talking to a minimum, all this stuff. It really matters. Cause like if two people start talking and then like the 3 people around them, 5 people around them are distracted, they're not laughing now. And then it's just like, it's like kind of like a hole in the room. So it's like, I guess those bad shows are often just, it's not necessarily, what's funny is comics always say it's like hot people are the worst comedy audience because they just want to be hot. They don't want to laugh. Laughing isn't a hot person thing, if that's the shortest answer, I guess. I was trying to be very like, the hot people.
The room's too hot.
Yeah, the room's too hot. Or it's just like it's hard because like sometimes people just like go out to want to be. They're not necessarily comedy fans, but they want to go to a show.
Yeah,
which is fine. Come out, but laugh.
Yeah. I want to close the conversation by talking about, and I've talked to a bunch of the guests about this, about your definition of success. We talked a little bit before we started recording about your future, what you want to do. What's your current definition of what it would mean in your career to be successful at this?
Yeah. So number one is be past all the New York City clubs, but I was actually just thinking about this a little further where it's like, I think if I were to like gain the true success that I wanted, I would put out a special that is like culturally relevant. I think that's getting harder and harder to do with the amount of specials that come out.
Yeah.
But there are like a few specials that everyone kind of regards in this like a hierarchy of great comedy specials, and to put something out that like is at that tier, I think would make me really happy.
Do you need that? Do you need this career to make you money to survive? It sounds like you have that problem solved.
Yeah.
Which very few people I would imagine do. And I would think overall that's an amazing amount of leverage that you have for just long-term endurance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the approach I'm taking. I was talking to my wife about when I could possibly quit. And she was like, not anytime soon. She's like, are you sure my $25 a week right now, $250 a week I'm making on comedy right now aren't going to do it. But that definitely helps. I need to like figure out how to better invest my money into comedy because right now I'm just, they're just two separate lives. It's like 9 to 5, 9 to 4. I do one thing, and then 5 to 10, 5 to 11, I do the other.
I don't think I've talked to any comic yet about the financial component of what it means to be, a working comedian in the city and how much money people typically make. I'm sure you guys all talk about that off stage, but talk to me, unless you are a Bill Burr or somebody who's a regular at the Comedy Cellar. Talk to me about what the range typically is of what working comics are earning in the city.
So open mics we're paying to go in New York, which is kind of a crime, but it's just the way it is.
You pay the venue.
Yeah, it's embarrassing because no other city does it. Everybody else, maybe LA does it a little bit, but like my friends back in Oklahoma, they're like, you pay to go to an open mic? I'm like, yeah, it sucks. So that's like -$5. And then if you get booked on a show, it's either anywhere between free to $20 to $25. That's like a spot, and then if you're hosting, you might get paid a little more, $40. But even like the Cellar comics, I'm pretty sure they make like $30 a show to do the Cellar. Yeah. Those guys all make their money by doing either a lot of spots in a night or hitting the road. The road is where comics usually make their money. Like if they go do a weekend wherever, they'll make like a few thousand to 10,000 or whatever.
Wow. So the Cellar is where they go to get known.
Exactly.
Basically.
It's kind of the blue check of comedians.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Like if you're past at the Cellar, it's like kind of like being in the cool kids table.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Maybe we could close on this. You just talked about how a part of being a great comedian is being able to talk about the unspeakable thing in culture. And it's one thing I think instinctively I've always admired about comedians. And they don't always hit the bullseye, but a lot of times I'm somebody who used to go to a lot of book talks and academic environments. And I just came to find that not only are great stand-up comedy events more fun. There's often more truth being told in those venues than anywhere else. That can also, people often hate truth tellers.
Of course.
And truth tellers can be reviled, can be hated by the community in general. I don't know if you've always had that ability, if you think of yourself as somebody who can say the unspeakable thing, but it sounds like from your own definition, that's a requirement to be a great comic, is to be that person. Anything you want to close on with that? I would love to hear the bravery, the courage, maybe the natural constitution to be someone who does that.
I think it's something that I don't think I've been good at. I think it's something that where it's like you kind of got to work on it, because it's like throughout life you'll learn more about like, oh, maybe I was being irrational back then, or maybe I was being too lenient. Like I think that's something you just like learn through your life experiences. And like this truth teller thing, maybe not like, I don't know. I don't necessarily see, I guess it's just like more than truth teller. Maybe it's like having good perspective. Is like really what it is to work on, and understanding both sides of a predicament and being able to like really be specific in how you approach it. But as far as like, sorry, what was I don't even really, I heard you ask a question and then I immediately forgot it.
Basically, if you regard yourself as someone who has the ability to do that, to walk into a cultural moment and say the thing nobody else will say.
I think I have good perspective just like because of where I'm from and like how I grew up. And like, I think at least, I don't know about good perspective, but I definitely have like an uncommon perspective having moved out here. And I think that allows me to like have a little more freedom of like how I see things. And like, I mean, do I see myself as some great truth teller in every situation? Definitely not. Because I think it takes time and like you have to really like understand a problem to be able to like take a good position on it.
What do you mean by perspective from where you come from? How do you think that helps you?
I think just being like I feel like there, at least for a while, like, like people shit on like conservatives. Like that was like the popular thing to do from like, other than the last like 5 years before that, it was like, that's all people were doing in comedy. And it's like, those are my friends. Those are the people I grew up with. They're not dumb. They're not bad people. They maybe just like are a little like, sheltered or whatever, or like don't have the life experiences someone else has. And then like,
or just have a different belief system.
And then it's also like being Pakistani and like Muslim and like, it's like, I also grew up super different than they did, and it's like, I never really fit in with that conservative kind of like ideology. So like, I kind of just like by default went the other way. Right. Where it's like, you end up like being more liberal, and it's like, but I kind of have both. And like, I don't know. I think that was a good balance and perspective to be able to approach comedy, because it sucks to like just shit on one side. It like dehumanizes them. And I think comedy should do a good job of like bringing people together.
It's also boring. I find, and predictable. And that is
predictable
not funny.
That's the real killer. It's like when your comedy is predictable, it's like anyone, ChatGPT could do this.
Maybe I could sneak in one last question, which would be the advice you would give to when you first moved here. I think you said you were 30. What have you learned that if somebody comes across this and they're thinking about moving here, like what advice would you give the younger version of yourself, or to anyone who is basically you 4 or 5 years ago, whenever you came here?
For me, I was very afraid of what people would think, or like failure. I wasn't really afraid of failure. I was just worried about what everyone would think. My friends, my parents, all this stuff. And nobody cares. That's what I would tell. And literally nobody gives a shit. Nobody's thinking about you. It doesn't matter. Just start. Nobody's even going to know. And so I would tell myself, or somebody like me, to just start, and it's not as hard or bad or scary as you think. And that you will be very happy you did.
Love it. Thanks, bro.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.